Well, good morning, everyone. Andrew Kircher here with Port Huron Museum. We're back to our architectural field trip. Took a day yesterday doing a little bit of research. I think, as I've mentioned a couple times, we've done a lot of the kind of low-hanging fruit of Port Huron, but it's a big tree. There is a lot to cover on these tours, a lot of different parts of the city, and we've got a little bit of a walk ahead of us today, so we're going to get started pretty quickly. But I know I'd gotten multiple requests since we've started these, and hopefully I'll show you here. I'll flip my camera around so we can see where we are. We're at 23rd and Railroad. This is an area that maybe a lot of people have not been to in Port Huron. There's not a whole lot of reason to come here if you don't happen to live in this neighborhood anymore, but there's some neat things to see and a lot of neat history here. Hopefully you notice some audio quality. My fiance was kind enough to get me a little microphone that plugs in, so I hope that will cut down on the wind noise that we have here. So we are walking east on Railroad Street, and unsurprisingly we are by the railroad and the railroad tracks. We're going to talk a little bit about that now. The neat thing about this neighborhood, it's changed quite a bit since the 1970s, because this used to be the site of the depot. Maybe some of our more senior viewers might remember what was in this area. All right, so we can see we're by the Liberty Riders. There's another kind of closed up older building here. But this whole little strip here was actually like a little town, more or less. So this area here, I'm going to walk up this way so maybe you get a better idea of where we are. This was the site from 1891 to 1974 of the depot, the tunnel depot. So we won't go venture too far out here because this is still a very active rail yard, but you can see there are quite a few trains here. There's a whole, well, trains down that way. There's a switching station. There's some of these big metal, there we go, metal girders and beams left over from what was an incredibly busy train station for a little less than a century. And as you can see, there's really not much left of it now. But as you might imagine, with a busy train station, like, so if you came to Port Huron 100 years ago, 120 years ago, 1900, you're probably going to get here by train. When you get off that train, you're going to want all the amenities we think of when we think of an airport today. So along this row here, there were a couple of hotels, there was a pharmacy, there was a candy shop. Those are all of the kinds of things that you would have seen in the little neighborhood here. There was another hotel like over this way, because you've got these thousands of passengers every single year stopping through the tunnel. And I want to talk about the tunnel. We're going to try and get a peek of it today as we make our way east. Like I said, we got a little bit of a hike today, but I think these things were all pretty well related, and it seemed like just far enough. It was one of those things of maybe this could have been two videos, maybe it's one. It seems pretty nice out today. It's like 40, so we're gonna go and try and do this just in one day. So we have turned onto Cypress Street. We are heading east on Cypress towards the water tower. So there was a whole neighborhood here that really sprung up in the 1890s, because this would have been a very bustling place. There was an inner urban stop, so there was like a street railway. So say your train got in, but you wanted to go downtown, you were an important person and you wanted to go visit, the Harrington. Well, it's a bit of a hike to just walk all the way back to the Harrington from here or go downtown. So there was a streetcar system that you could hop on that would take you up like 22nd, and there were a couple of interchanges, one that would take people all the way down like 24th Street, another that you could get all the way up to basically Lakeside Beach, where that is now. So it's really no surprise it's the 70s. This area has become kind of heavy industry. Unfortunately, you guys will have to Google a picture of that original train depot. The tunnel depot is a pretty beautiful building. Had a great big kind of like Tudor revival style to it. Some of that half timbering, but a very pretty station. But Amtrak, which does still run through Port Huron, this is the end of the line for passenger service anyway. When it ran through, they put the they didn't put the station here. They put it further down the line. Unfortunately, the building was demolished. So there's your lesson in historic preservation. You know, once you lose something, you can't get it back. It's maybe a little editorializing on my part, but obviously I'm a big fan of historic preservation. All right, so we are again heading east. I know some of this may be a little uninteresting visually, but that's kind of the nature of industrial areas. It gives us a little bit of time to talk a little bit about the importance of the tunnel. So the St. Clair Tunnel is probably one of the most important things in Port Huron that I am constantly astounded at the number of people who don't realize it exists. I guess part of the reasons why, when we think about big infrastructure projects, things like the Blue Water Bridge, we can see, you see that, you know, it's on all the postcards, it's on murals, there's companies named after it. Well, if you'd been here 120 years ago, one of Port Huron's nicknames was actually Tunnel City. And so with Tunnel City, I like being able to see you guys and reading these at the same time. With Tunnel City, you know, it's what we were really known for, even though it was a piece of infrastructure that you couldn't see. And I think that's why a lot of people don't think about it today. Rail ridership is, of course, down. There aren't, to my knowledge, any passenger lines that go through the tunnel at all anymore. So it's just something people don't think about. But it's still a hugely important piece of infrastructure and an important piece that still gets used a lot. Thousands of trains pass through there every year. I can hear them go by. I can hear the train tunnels or the train's horns, and I imagine quite a few of you can as well as they pass through to Canada. But other rail links have been made with the increase in trucking. Some rail shipments really have gone downhill. They're not quite as important. Now, for shipping some things, bulk goods, obviously rail is still the best way to ship anything. But if you think about 100 years ago, man, this was incredibly important as an area here. Oh, okay. We're still walking north, but there are a couple of cool older vehicles. There's a military truck here, hanging out with some historical plates, and we've got, I don't know, the late early 50s here. I'm not as good at with its identification. Some of the pieces are off there. I'd say it's probably like a 52 or 53 Chevy sitting back there. The things you see while you're just kind of walking out and about. Like I said, sorry, we've got like a couple of blocks till we can come up here and turn right on 16th Street. We've got the City of Port Huron Department of Public Works. Nice big water tower, so lots of infrastructure here still today. And there's a cute little bird with some long legs. I'm not an ornithologist. I have no idea what kind of bird that is, but he is running right along. Anyway, where were we? So this tunnel was incredibly important. Port Huron and Sarnia share a really long history, obviously. People would live on both sides of the river, and there was a natural inclination to take that river back and forth. So again, we are on Bancroft at 18th, if you are playing along at home. There is 18th Street. We're going to come up here to 16th Street and take a right. My grandfather, who is genius at cars, apparently said that I was right. So 52 or 53 Chevy back there that we passed by. Anyway, we've been talking about trains and I lost my train of thought. There was a lot of connection between the two cities, but obviously with the river in between, there was a need for a ferry. And there were a number of ferries and ferry service that ran back and forth. In fact, one of the first commercial ferries that I really enjoyed reading about was actually horse-powered. There was like a great big treadmill, and this was in like the 1840s, and the horse would walk on the treadmill, and it would power some paddles behind it, and you could go back and forth a couple hundred yards across the river. But obviously that's not really very conducive to bulk transit. And especially once rail becomes important. By the 1840s and 50s, by 1858, there was the rail spur that went up to what is now the Thomas Edison Depot. So there's already quite a bit of rail traffic. Same thing was going on in Canada. Everybody was rushing to industrialize, but you create a pretty big gap in your rail service, and that's going to take a really long time to cross that gap of the river. So they were using swing ferries for a while, which were like a great big ferry that you could drive a bunch of train cars onto. It would be anchored at one end. It was anchored up by the lighthouse, and the current would allow that ferry without a motor to go back and forth across. You grab it, tie up, link onto rails on the other end. Again, very inefficient. So you can see the need for a tunnel, and that's what the people at Grand Trunk thought. Now, Grand Trunk, there was a whole series of railroad history, and if you want to know more about that, the Port Huron to Detroit Railroad Historical Society would be a great source of information. There's a local historian, T.J. Gaffney, who knows more about railroads than anyone else that I know. All right, we've made it to 16th Street. We're going to turn right here. We're going to cross 16th. And now we're walking south. So these swing ferries weren't cutting it. And the Grand Trunk, the railway system that connected most of Canada, or at least eastern Canada, wanted to build a tunnel. It was a massive undertaking. This is something that would have appeared in like Scientific American, engineering magazines the world over. They dug it from both sides and met in the middle, and it was basically hand dug. They had used compressed air. The tunnel's not very deep, but deep enough and long enough that you'd have a hard time breathing if they weren't forcing air in from the other side. And that is an important lesson we're going to come back to in a little bit here. I'm going to flip my camera here because we're walking by a pretty cool house. Nice little brick guy here. Maybe kind of colonial revival. I think it's pretty cute. So they dig this tunnel from both sides. They're only off by like a foot. They meet in the middle. Dig this out. There are things like donkeys hauling out the dirt, and they lay the rail line. And now, oops, sorry about that. Oh no, my gimbal here wants to go the other way. We're gonna turn it off and back on. There we go. All right, so they lay this rail tunnel. Joseph Hobson was the name of the engineer in charge of all of that. He's well remembered as a engineer, and from end to end the tunnel is about 6,000 feet long, and the middle third of it or so is underwater. And it's got a 20-foot diameter, and back in 1891 it cost $2.7 million to build. All right, we are coming up. I promise there'll be something real interesting to see here. Again, we got lots of just warehouse districts, a couple of homes, but we're gonna walk past the rail line. Now, I've got a job for all of you, the viewer, who are following along at home. And it's, if I get picked up by Border Patrol you guys are going to have to come bail me out. The tunnel here is obviously a connection to Canada, and I'm sure it's pretty heavily monitored, and I might look like a weirdo in a weird hat with a camera filming at an international border crossing. Hopefully they'll buy my explanation in our tour. So I'm putting myself out there for you, and hopefully I don't get on any watch lists or anything like that snooping around. We're not going to go too close, but close enough to get a good view so we can see what we're looking at here. All right, so here we've got the train tracks. So if we look this way, make sure there's nothing coming. We look this way, we can see where we were down that way a few blocks. And then when we look this way, oh, there we go. We look this way, we can see there's the tunnel. So I don't know. What do you guys think? If I sprinted for it, do you think I could make it to Canada? Hopefully no trains coming the other way. I don't think I'd want to try it. But you can see that is actually the new tunnel. The new tunnel was dug in 1993. Over here, we have the tracks to the old tunnel, which you could kind of see down there. But it's been sealed off. That's the one that they dug in 1891. We're going to go down maybe to 10th Street and again see what we can see, kind of looking over it. Again, this is one of the reasons I think a lot of people don't realize this infrastructure is here. It's pretty easy to just blow past it, not even realize what you are looking at. But the tunnel opened to great fanfare in 1891. It was super useful to have that complete link. Not only for Canada, you know, this immediate Canada to Port Huron crossing, but think about the wider picture. Picture all of North America. If you are in New York, if you're in Boston, and you want to ship something to Chicago, Chicago's a huge city. I mean, it still is today, but it's growing by leaps and bounds. The 1890s, 1900. This way, you can go straight across Canada. You don't have to worry about going down around the lakes. Straight line's always the fastest way between 2 points. So this is a huge bonus. Over here, there's the Semco Energy building. I don't really have anything to say about that building. It's an office building. Some more offices and warehouses up here. Maybe some of you work at some of them or know somebody who does. I don't really know much about some of them other than probably what you could read the sign on the door. But again, we're going to keep heading east as soon as we can make a left turn right up here. Now, I think just even glancing at like Google Maps, there might be a place where we might be able to sneak another little closer pic of the portal. And you can see where the trains come from. It is a very nice morning. Candace mentions it's nice out. It is probably a good 40, 45 out. Brisk, I suppose. I don't think I'd want to be in shorts and a t-shirt, but I rarely am. But it's very comfortable with a jacket and long sleeves. We're going to make a left right up here. So this tunnel is huge for a number of reasons. Not only do you have all of that bulk freight that's being shipped, but passenger service. I've mentioned it before. Port Huron was second to Ellis Island for processing new immigrants into the United States. So it's pretty crazy to me, and we'll see it at 10th Street, that for thousands and thousands and thousands of people, this was their first view. This area right here was their first view of the United States. That train depot where we were at earlier, that's going to be their first chance to like stretch their legs, meet with a customs and immigration inspector, and see, you know, the land of the free and all that. It's I don't want to sound too sentimental here, but that's pretty cool when you think about it. You know, we don't have a Statue of Liberty, but we could have something kind of like that. All right, so now we are headed, oh, I didn't look at the cross street here. We are headed north on, I'll tell you at the next block, because I don't remember the name of the street off the top of my head. A couple of older homes here with these enclosed porches. That's a popular renovation to do to give you a little bit of more space inside. And there are some really cute little Cape Cod type homes over there. There's a number of housing booms in the 20th century. There's a big one in the 1920s after World War I. There's a big one right after World War II. That's when you see tons of houses like this pop up. I wouldn't be surprised if these were late 40s, early 50s homes. It's amazing, you know, today we're used to these big 2,000, 2,500 square foot homes. It's not really unusual at all. But a lot of the homes built right after World War II were like 900 square feet or 1,000 square feet. It's not very big at all. We'll poke down around this way. Maybe walk the fence line here next to where the little rail cut is. So obviously the rail cut needs to go under because we're going right under the river, and railways can't go at much more than like a 4 or 5% grade because it's just steel on steel wheels. It's not like a car that could take a really steep drop and hill. So then you really need to go down deep. I think it's like 200 feet down below the river and everything at its lowest point. The train bridge, or train tunnel rather, that goes under. Now I will also tell you, I'll mention this well away from that tunnel entrance. I don't want to give anybody ideas, but the tunnel here has actually directly been threatened a few times. There have been a couple times where the tunnel has been threatened by sabotage during the First and the Second World War. The First World War is the better story, so maybe I'll tell that secondly. Yeah, we'll just walk down here. Again, we're doing this in the name of history. It's okay. So the Second World War, a huge amount of the traffic passing through this tunnel was industry from the United States into Canada. And the sabotage attempt actually happened in 1940. So this is before the United States entered the war. But Canada, part of the British Empire, they're definitely involved. There's a lot of war material moving from places like Detroit, places like Chicago, through the St. Clair Tunnel to get to Canada to be used, again, for wartime production. So you can see that'd be a good tempting target for the Germans. One day a train's passing through, and it was shipping a pile of, I guess not a pile, but a couple train cars full of airplane parts, airplane engines. And it comes out the other side smoking. Someone had tried to set it on fire. They looked, and there was definite signs of sabotage. I guess we're a little further away than I thought we'd be, which is kind of a bummer. So anyway, train tunnel's over there. We'll keep walking north and maybe cut over up there. So I'm not sure who owns this big vacant strip of land here. So you see the train tunnel. Sorry, my gimbal's acting up again a little bit here. The train tunnel comes out, the sabotaged equipment comes out the other side, and they investigate, and they discover there had been attempted sabotage. And I'm like, well, that's weird. They set like one crate with an airplane engine on fire. That was not very damaging at all. So what gives? Well, until they took a look at the train schedules, the saboteurs, who were never caught, if they had done this to the train that came through before, which is what they were really interested in, it had been carrying high explosives. If they had been able to blow up that tunnel, it would have been a pretty massive dent in the war production of Canada. Sorry, I'm going to try and re-stabilize. There we go. A pretty massive dent in war production for Canada. So they never caught the saboteurs, but they placed an armed guard 24/7 at each mouth of the tunnel. Obviously kept that under high security. It's pretty high security today as well. So the other story, World War I, coming up here to another cross street that I thought I'd be able to cut my way back through. And let that be a lesson to you. Maybe Google Earth isn't always the best way to plan your ins and your outs. Looks like they've added some new fencing here. We'll just keep walking the fence line here. I think it puts out on 10th Street that way. Anyway, so World War I. Sorry, this one doesn't have as much interesting things to see. Again, we're just walking along a fence line here. But I can see some cars putting out at the other end. So World War I, there was a plot. It was kind of zany. It was like almost like a Looney Tunes plot to blow up the tunnel. Even more war material was being shipped through the tunnel in World War I than World War II. And so as a result, it became even more important. Now, 1915, again, the United States is not involved in the war, but Canada sure is. And as a result, the Germans are, again, really interested in blowing that tunnel up. There was a German businessman down in Detroit who was head of, like, the German intelligence operation for Michigan and part of the Midwest. He and 4 others got plans to blow up a number of operations in the area all at once. They were going to blow up the Windsor Armory. They were going to blow up the Detroit Screw Works, big factory, obviously producing quite a bit. Well, it's kind of a bummer, but probably by design. We are, there's really not much to see here. The road kind of just ends and goes off that way. The train tunnel, again, since it's a cut, you can't really see it at all. We'll hike up another block or two and look back over down the railway track. All right, no, we're all perfectly safe. It's okay, everybody. Just going on a little walk. Didn't do anything dangerous or go anywhere I wasn't supposed to be. All right, so the plan this time was even more simple. World War II, they had drilled into these rail cars and planted these little incendiary devices. Well, they didn't work very well, obviously. Except they probably would have had they been the high explosive cars rather than just like a crate with an engine in it. World War I, the plan was even more simple and, like I said, kind of zany. They had started to build a contraption made out of roller skates that they could clamp onto the rail. The idea was they would create a time bomb out of dynamite, strap it to the roller skate, and the steep grade down into the tunnel from where we started there on 16th Street, they just kind of walk by and shove the roller skate down, and it would detonate somewhere in the tunnel, collapsing the whole thing. It was, again, kind of zany. They caught them with like dynamite and these roller skates. The guy was sentenced to 4 years at Leavenworth. They bailed him out after, I think, 3. And they eventually deported him. But he must have loved the United States a whole lot, because he actually came back in like 1926, 27, and worked some more in Detroit. They caught him up, though. He missed one piece of paperwork, and they instantly deported him again. So, kind of an interesting story that way. Glad no one was hurt, but you can imagine the destruction that would cause. And it really tells you about the strategic significance of the railroad tunnel. We got a lot more of these nice little Cape Cod homes here. Now, I've been told in the last couple of videos not to apologize for my videos going too long, so I won't do that. Oh, there's a really cool cobblestone house up there. At least it's cobblestone clad. I doubt that it's actually made out of cobblestone, because it's got a kind of low profile, definitely like a 20th century build. You guys can all see that as we walk by. Again, there's another look out at the deep gorge there of where the train is. There's a arts and craftsy looking bungalow here, pretty popular in the teens, and like a triplex across the street. So what else is there to say about the tunnel? They built the second tunnel in the 90s. They used some of the same boring equipment as they got from what had dug the tunnel, a British machine called Excalibur. It's kind of got a funny name, I guess. And it was dug from the Canadian side to the American side. They didn't meet in the middle. And they were really close in all of their estimations. There's a nice forest square up there on the corner. We're coming up on, this should be 10th Street, where we will turn left. So, the new tunnel is like 28 feet in diameter. So they can use double-decker cars. Now, I remember when I was a kid, I was really into trains. I loved Thomas the Tank Engine. I loved all of his friends. In fact, there's a neat little Easter egg. Maybe we'll go on a tour sometime and see. At my first house, there was a shed in the backyard. You can still see it from the alley. And I got to pick out the paint color. I picked it was red, and I gave it number 5 to name it for, I think, James the train from Thomas the Tank Engine. And it's still there. It's still red, and I'd be curious to see if that number 5 is still up on top. Something I was really into. So again, we are now turning north on 10th Street. You can watch out there, the first step's a doozy. Yeah, we're going to walk up this way, and we'll be able to at least look kind of down over top of where the tunnel entrance is. Again, this massive piece of infrastructure that was enough of infrastructure to give the city a nickname for a long time. I'm amazed by the number of people who just don't know it's there, or the trains are still running through it. Although I think there's been an uptick in people knowing about it, because there was actually a pretty nasty accident there last year. I don't think anyone was hurt, but a train derailed inside the tunnel and spilled some pretty nasty chemicals, some nasty enough stuff that they had to close the tunnel for like a week and a half while they were cleaning all of it out. Alright, so now you can see there's like a little access road down that way to the tunnel. Again, the old tunnel is to the south, and the newer tunnel is to the north. One of the things, speaking of nasty chemicals, they had a lot of trouble with fumes, noxious fumes, in especially the old tunnel. Because in 1891, they were running steam locomotives, and frequently the train cars could become decoupled inside. And when they became, so you can see, I'll do my best to get you guys a good picture there. You see, there's the train tracks. That little arch there by that piece of, I don't know, probably HVAC equipment of some kind, that is the portal to the new tunnel. So it's kind of sad that for such a cool piece of infrastructure, there is nothing really to see. Anyway, we got one more stop today, if you'll bear with me. Again, this one might be our longest yet, but there's a lot to see. We're going to keep heading north, and I've got 1 or 2 more stories about the tunnel. Again, there you can maybe see a little bit better that portal, and you would be able to see where trains would come through. And the old remnants of the rail line there on the left, isn't much left. So, all right, 10th Street is deserted, so we're going to go across the street. I love this place. This is a great example of some mid-century modern. This is late 50s, early 60s. That flat roof really gives it away. Those weren't super popular in Michigan because of the huge amount of snow we get. They're really popular in Southern California. When we think about architecture, people are taking their design cues from, just like with fashion, everybody wants to copy what they're doing in Paris or London or New York. The same kind of thing happens with architecture. There are some real cool places for sure to try and copy from. And the happening place in the 50s and 60s, California, and Southern California was on the grow. So you see a lot of things copied from that area of the country. And those flat roofs are really popular. The other thing that comes out of there is ranch-style homes. I bet a fair number of people watching were from live in ranch-style homes. Oh, my sister asked me. I promised I was going to get back to this. We've got a little bit more, a couple more blocks to go. The noxious gas. So they were running steam trains in the 1890s, and the cars would become uncoupled if they went too fast down the tunnel or back up the other side. By the way, there's a really cool walkway there. We're not going to walk on it because we're more interested in buildings than nature right now, because I don't have anything really interesting to say about nature, or at least anything intelligent sounding. So we're going to walk up the street here, look at some more houses. So as the trains would come up the other side, the train would uncouple. They'd have to back the train back in, the engine, and try and hook everything back up to clear the tunnel. Well, while the train's in there burning all that coal, it's producing really poisonous gas. And there were like 3 or 4 incidents where people were overcome by fumes and actually killed in the tunnel. And there were a couple instances, some really brave guys going back in, putting a rag over their face and trying to hook up the train and put it back into gear to go and drag the crew out. It's a really good thing that never happened to like a passenger train, because a lot of people could have died. That would be very, very bad. There's a nice little 4 square there. Actually, this looks a whole lot like, we're going to have to come back to this house. Take a look at this house. Keep in mind, we're going to look at the Sears catalog, because that looks a whole lot like one of the Sears homes. And we're going to maybe compare and contrast later. And I've got a whole walk this week. We're going to talk about kit homes. There's a little preview for you. Did you know you could buy a house from Sears and Roebuck? It's true. So we'll come back to that. So what did they do with the noxious gases? By 1908, after several of these incidents, I like the triple dormer up there. By 1908, they electrified the train tunnel. So they used electric trains. Electric trains don't obviously put off any gas. They had tried putting these big blowers at each end of the tunnel, try and blow all the fumes out, but it just didn't work. They weren't able to provide enough fresh air inside this kind of enclosed tunnel to make it safe. There's some nice bungalow over there in the 4 square. Nice. I like the porch on this house as well. Another 4 square up there, and I really like that red and white paint job on the house next to it. So they had electric trains for a long time. By the 1950s, they were able to switch to diesel trains, and they used some kind of purifier. Plus, they just didn't have as many fumes, and they were far more reliable than the steam trains as far as not coming uncoupled. So it really wasn't an issue anymore. So we are at 9th and Beard, if you're playing along at home. So I know this one's kind of long, but we're going to end up here with a nice view of the water as we walk over to the Seaway terminal, or the Bean Dock, as a lot of people call it today. There's a nice Queen Anne up here with a witch's hat. You guys can all see that pointy witch's hat on top of that tower. So I think that's everything I had to say about the tunnel. Like I said, I think it's important enough that it definitely justifies that much talking about. There we go. That's a gorgeous Queen Anne here. Nice kind of enclosed porch, big tower. Might be apartments, I'm not sure. Doesn't look like it though. again, some more larger homes. Hello. So the Seaway terminal. We'll talk about it on the way there, and we won't have to spend as much time there. I know people want to get on with their day. The Seaway terminal was built in 1959, and it corresponds with another really important piece of infrastructure. See, today's theme was infrastructure. The other piece of infrastructure was the St. Lawrence Seaway. There was a huge connection finally from the Great Lakes straight on through to the oceans. And large ocean-going vessels could sail all the way here through a series of locks and get all the way up to the Great Lakes. Because believe it or not, we're like 500 feet above the ocean. Think about it, like Niagara Falls. That has to come somewhere. Here's another great mid-century building with the great big glasses. Yeah! All right, we've got some fans here. It's a gorgeous place you got. I like it. It's kind of colonial revival with like a little wing on the side there. We've got some fans. We're just walking to the Seaway terminal.
Nice walk down there.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple people are checking us out. Must have some fans. Anyway, so 1959, St. Lawrence Seaway opens up. People of Port Huron realize we've got a whole new realm of commerce that might make its way here. And it certainly did in the 1950s. All right, so if you're playing along at home, we've made it all the way to Beard and Military. There's the lovely Chemical Valley over in Canada. Some heavy industry for sure. And here's the Seaway terminal. So they build this to accommodate new ocean-going freighters, and for a long time, the first load out was actually a load of beans. They sent it to Germany. We sent a lot of grains from the Thumb to Europe, and Europe was sending actually a lot of forestry products back. They're sending a lot of wood pulp for the paper mills here. Seems pretty crazy, you know, that they would be built, that they would be sending wood pulp to Michigan when we've got so many natural forests here, but a lot of them had been already harvested, and it just made economic sense. You don't want to send a boat empty in either direction. So you see a lot of 500-600 foot boats docking here. It's a great place to dock. It's a number of ships have been tied up down there. We'll walk to the actual office complex. It's been it's considerably nicer now than it would have been when this was a working dock. I mean, it still is a working dock, but not like a cargo dock, not like it was. Today, this is a great place for weddings. One of my good friends got married here. If he's watching, I really enjoyed your wedding, Jeremy. It was a beautiful ceremony right down there. So by the 80s, though, ships have gotten bigger, and same old story. You know, just modes of transport started to change. Some things were just no longer economical to be shipped into Port Huron, and you saw less and less of these freighters docking right here to load up grains. Another big one, grains and sugar beets. We know the Thumb had lots and lots of sugar beets. So what remains to be seen? Who knows what they're going to do with this area. I know I would kind of like to see it turned into a dock for cruise ships, as we kind of shift focus to tourism. Okay, there's a plaque here. This, I'll be honest, I've never read the plaque before. In appreciation of Edgar Kiefer, Chairman, Port Huron Maritime Commission, 54 to 64. Dedicated public servant, his vision and effort made the Seaway terminal a reality. A lot of ships stopped here. They unloaded a lot of cargo. Again, the Port Huron Terminal Company, just a simple office building here from 1959. How you like that? Reserved for captain. The Highlander Sea was down here for a long time. There were a number of ships. I imagine quite a few of you have probably been here before in one capacity or another part of the complex here. I do want to take this one last second while we're here. I promise we'll end real shortly here. what another architectural term for you. These things right here on the edges of buildings, usually especially like brick buildings, and you see these big limestone or granite blocks that are smooth and provide a big contrast. They're called quoins, Q-U-O-I-M-S, something like that. I'm not a good speller, but quoins. So this building has quoins on the corners. So there is your word. So this is actually the substation for the Detroit Edison. This building is quite a bit older than the terminal. This one is 1917, as you can see there. All right, that was a marathon. I know, because I just walked it and I was here too. Whoa, sorry, went the wrong way. So I was backwards, I'm facing myself. So I want to thank you all for coming along. You guys know the drill by this point. If you liked what you saw, share this with a friend. Like, comment. I always want to see ideas for future visits. If you've got a place you think I should go see or go visit, throw it up in the comments. People have been giving me a call or messaging me or messaging the museum. I love to read all the comments and see what you people say. If you want to support the museum, you can do so at our website, phmuseum.org, or just give us a Google for Huron Museums. We're really looking forward to having you back at our sites. I'm going to find when it's safe to cross here and start heading back to my car. It's a bit of a walk. I got to do it backwards. But anyway, thank you so much for coming along. Hopefully you learned something. Like I said, I know today's was long, but I think that infrastructure is more important than people let on. And it's something that just, I think, a ton of people don't realize is there. So for all those reasons, I think it justifies the longer walk today. So thanks for coming along, and we'll catch all of you on the flip side. Remember to check out the history in your own backyard. Until next time.